We continue now at the top of Daf Lamed Vav Amud Aleph in Meseches Bava Kamma. This is Bava Kamma Daf 36a. On the previous summit, the Gemara was discussing the opinion of Rabba Bar Nosson that if one person claims from another that that person owes them chitim, that that person owes them wheat, and the person says, no, I don't owe you wheat, but I owe you barley. So the halach is, according to Rabba Bar Nosson, the person is patur. He doesn't even owe the barley because it's as if the person claiming the wheat has said it's wheat and not barley. Essentially, he has forgiven the barley, and therefore the person owes nothing. And so the Gemara asked from the Mishnah, because the Mishnah said, let's say the Nizik says that your tam gored my smaller animal and your muad gored my larger animal, and the Mazik reverses it. He says, no, the tam actually gored the larger animal and it was the muad that gored the smaller animal. So in that case, it says in the Mishnah that the Nizik needs to bring a proof in order to collect according to what he is saying. But the Gemara infers that if the Nizik does not bring a proof, then the Mazik is going to pay according to what he is saying. And the problem is that Rabbi Nosson would say, no, the Mazik doesn't owe anything because the Nizik has already forgiven the other scenario that the Mazik said. And so the Gemara now answers the same answer that it gave before. Ro'ei litol ve'ein lo. No, you don't draw that inference from the Mishnah. The Mishnah means to say that in a situation where no proof is brought by the Nizik, so then he's trying to get from what the Mazik is claiming, but he can't get anything. He actually is not able to get anything if he does not bring a raya. And the Gemara continues, Vatanya, but we learned in the Brisa the opposite. It says no. It says that the person does have to pay for the smaller animal from the muad and for the larger animal from the tam, meaning we do go by what the Mazik said, and that certainly seems to go against what Rabba Bar Nosson said. And the Gemara says, no, that Brisa, again, like the Gemara answered earlier, is the tafas. It's talking about a situation where the Nizik actually already grabbed. He already took that for himself. And so now he's in possession of that. In that case, he can take, again, in accordance with the way the Mazik said it happened. But in a case where he was not tofes, if he didn't actually seize the property, the Mazik would owe nothing. And that follows Rabba Bar Nosson's opinion as well. And we will continue now the Rashi from the previous Amud. Ulahachi mukim lahachi. Now, why is it that the Gemara gives this answer that says the inference essentially from the Mishnah is incorrect, and if the Nizik doesn't bring a proof, he gets nothing? Why bring that? Why bring that as the answer? We had another answer on the previous Amud to the same question. V'lo mukim la kedu'ukim l'mitziyasa la'el. Why not just answer like we answered the middle case of the Mishnah earlier? B'nizik shema u'mazik bari. That the case actually is where the Nizik is a shema. It's a very simple answer. The Nizik isn't saying that for sure. Let's say the muad gored my large animal, and for sure the tam gored the small one. The Nizik is not sure. And since the Nizik is not sure, he has not forgiven that other scenario of the Mazik. And that could be a simple answer to the question to bring the Mishnah in line with Rabba Bar Nosson. And Rashi says to that, Imkein hainu hach, because if we gave that answer, that would mean it's all the same chiddush. The seifa ma'itzrich, why would we need the seifa at all? And so that's why we want to give this second answer. And Rashi continues, V'Rabba du'kma l'mitziyasa d'nizik shema u'mazik bari. Now Rabba, who does answer that middle case of the Mishnah, that it's talking about a case where the nizik is shema and the mazik is bari. V'lo ukma b'bari u'bari v'lishni roiv litol ve'in. Why not just say it's talking about bari and bari, give the same answer we're giving over here, that again, if the nizik doesn't bring a proof, he doesn't take anything. Mishum desvir le de sumches lo amar cholkin b'bari u'bari. The reason why he doesn't want to say we're talking about bari and bari is because he holds sumches never said cholkin by bari and bari. And again, the whole point is that the Mishnah is trying to go against sumches, so we want to talk about the case where sumches says cholkin, and again, sumches doesn't say cholkin by bari and bari. Therefore, the Reish of the Mishnah isn't talking about bari and bari, because again, the whole point is to go against sumchis, but it's not going to be a bari and bari case. That's why we say that the middle case is also shema and bari to take unami reisha b'bari v'shema, as we said in the previous summit. That way, the beginning of the Mishnah is bari shema, the middle case of the Mishnah is shema and bari, and that works better in terms of sumchis than saying that the beginning of the Mishnah is bari and bari, and then you have a situation where the Mishnah is switching between bari and shema cases. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said, "Hayu shneim shel ish echad, shneim chayavim." Let's say there are two oxen that are chasing after one ox, but if both oxen that are doing the chasing belong to one person, so then we don't know which ox exactly caused the injury, but it doesn't matter. Both of them are going to be chayiv. And the Gemara says, "Amar le Rava mi Parzika le Ravashi." Rava from Parzika said to Ravashi, "Shma minosha." We see from the Mishnah, "Shvarim tamim sheziku," that if you have two shvarim, two oxen that are tamim, and they damage Ratzah Mizeh Gover, that if he wants, he can collect from this one. If he wants, he can collect from the other one. That's what it sounds like by saying Shneim Chayavim. Rashi says Shma Minam Midekatani Shneim, from the fact that it says that both of them are Chayiv. Ratzah Mizeh Gover, Vim Avad Ha'echad. The point is, let's say one of these Shvarim, one of these shores would get lost. Kam Chaver B'Makomo. It sounds like the other one would take its place. Umeshtalim Himenu, and then you could collect from the one that's there. So do we see that from the Mishnah? And the Gemara answers, Hacham Mayaskin, and here what are we talking about in the Mishnah? B'muadin. We're talking about where we're not talking about two tams, we're talking about two muad, so you're not collecting from the shore at all. Rashi says, B'muadin, the sof mashalem aliyah. The mazik essentially owes, he has to pay from the best of his property. It doesn't matter if the shore is around or not. Lafika kol nechasav achroin lepiron. Therefore, all of his property is essentially, there's a lien on his property that he owes this money, he has to pay this money. And the Gemara says, Ibe muadin, but if we're talking about muads over here, let's look at the end of the Mishnah. Let's say one of them is large and one of them is small. Hanizik omer gadol hizik v'hamazik omer lo kela katan hizik. The nizik says it was the larger one that caused the damage. That way he'll be able to collect migufo from the animal that's larger. It's worth more. The mazik says no, it was the smaller one that did the damage. Hamotzi mechaver all of araya. So it says that the nizik, if he wants to get money from the mazik, he has to prove that it was the larger one. And the Gemara says, Iba muadin, but if we're talking about muads over here, my nafkale mine, what's the difference whether it was the bigger one or the smaller one? Sof to make Torah malia, boy l'shlume. Still, the person's in the mazik's going to have to pay the full value of the ox. It doesn't really matter whether the damaging ox was a bigger one or a smaller one. It makes no difference. And so Amar Lei, so he said back to him, you're right, Seifa b'tam. In the end of the Mishnah is talking about animals that are tam. V'reisha b'muadin, but the beginning of the Mishnah is talking about muadin. And so the Gemara says, Amar le Rav Acha Saba Rav Ashi. Rav Acha Saba said to Rav Ashi, but still that doesn't really explain it. Even if you're going to say that in the ratio where there were two ox that belonged to the same person and they were chasing, and we're saying Shneim Chayavin, we're talking about Muadin, but it doesn't fit with the language of the Mishnah. Even Muadin, if you're talking about Muadin, Chayavin, why is it saying that the two ox, that they're Chayiv? Chayiv Gavra mi boile. It should say the person, the Mazik is Chayiv, he has to pay from his property. It's not that nothing to do with the actual, the Shvarim, it doesn't have to do with the oxen. Vesu, and further, my shneim, what does it mean that they're both chayiv? That doesn't make sense. And so the Gemara says, you're right, el liolam betam. And really, the beginning of the Mishnah is talking about that the two oxen are tams. For Rabbi Akiva, and it's following the opinion of Rabbi Akiva, the Amar Shutfin Ninu, who says that the mazik and the nizik are actually partners in the animal that gored. B'taima de'isnu letarvayu, and what the Mishnah actually means is that since both of them are around, therefore delo matzi marchile, therefore he can't push them off, and you're able to collect from the mazik. Avolesnu letarvayu, but let's say they're not both around. Let's say one of the ox is lost; it's not around anymore. Matzi amar le, so then he could actually say to him, Zil aisi raya dehai Torah, bring a proof that it was this shore that's still around that did the damage. Vashalim lach, then I'll pay you. Otherwise, I'm not going to pay you. And essentially, the Mishnah is saying Shneim Chayavim only if they are both around. And Rashi says Elo liolam betam. And really, we're talking about in the beginning of the Mishnah, we are talking about a case of a tam. Both animals are actually tam. Katani Shnehem, and when it says over here that they're both chayavin, so lav kedeka'amr, it doesn't mean like what you think it means. You can collect from whichever one. Eloha kamashman, what it actually means to teach us is as follows: the cholzman sheshneim befaneinu gover, that as long as both of them are present, then the person the nizik can collect. But if one of them is lost, he can't collect. Rabbi Akiva hidamar shut feninu, and according to that, our Mishnah follows Rabbi Akiva that says that the mazik and the nizik are essentially now partners in the shore that did damage. Beguf shel shore, in the actual shore. Hilkach avad hashor avad nizko. Therefore, if the shore is lost, the nizik is not able to collect. Hilkach ke'av shneim hu demechayiv. Therefore, if they're both around, he's chayiv. V'ilesnu letarvayu ela echad. But if both of them are not around, just one of them is around, amar le, I see raya. Then he could just say, bring a proof, and then I'll pay you. Otherwise, I'm not going to pay you. But according to Rabbi Yishmael, who says that you don't become, the mazik doesn't become, or the nizik rather, doesn't become a partner in the shore, but the nizik is like a creditor, he's just owed money. Kevan damar balchov hu vezuzi hu da'asik base, since he says that the nizik is like a creditor who's owed money, ibed ha'echad lo ibed eschu, so just because one of them is lost, doesn't mean that the nizik loses his ability to collect, he still is able to collect, according to Rabbi Yishmael. Hadron aloch hameniach, that is the conclusion of Perek hameniach, it's the conclusion of the third Perek of Meseches Bava Kamma. If you're enjoying these videos and this channel, please like, share, and subscribe, and take a look at the description box below to see how you can support this channel. And we will now begin the fourth parak of Meseches Bava Kamma. And the Mishnah says, Shor shenagach arba v'chamisha shvarim, if a shor gores 4 or 5 oxen, zachar zeh, one after the other, yishalem le'achron shebehem, so the person that gets paid, it's the last person. The last nizik is the one that gets to collect payment. V'im yesh bo moser, and if there's some left over, yachzer shelefanav, then the one right before him, the second last one gets paid. V'im yesh bo moser yachzer l'shelefnei fanav, and if there's still extra left in terms of being able to pay, then it goes to the one before that. V'achron niskar, it's always going to be the last one that's actually going to benefit, that's going to be able to collect. Divrei Rabbi Meir, that's the opinion of Rabbi Meir. Rashi explains, Shor shenagach arba v'chamisha uvekulon hayatam. The case over here is that the animal was always a tam and never becomes a muad. The mishtalim migufo, so the payment has to be from the actual, like we say, from the value of the actual tam. V'hechi dami. Now, what is the case over here where it could gore 4 or 5 times and it's never a muad? Could go in raw shor v'nagach. The case could be like this: it saw a shor and it gored. V'raw shor v'lo nagach, but then it saw another shor and it didn't gore. V'raw shor v'nagach, then it saw a shor and it did gore. V'achar nagicha shniya, but then after that second goring, raw beis ba'mimo gimel, it saw 2 or 3 times a shor v'lo nagach, it saw a shor 2 or 3 times and didn't gore. T'afilu muad l'sei rugen leka. So then you don't even have any kind of pattern. In order to establish that an animal is a muad, there has to be a pattern. If, let's say, every other shor gored and that happened 3 times, that can establish the animal as a muad. But if there's no kind of pattern, it's just random, so then the shor is considered still a tam. The shor ein nasa muad elam kei nagach hagimel nagichos b'shlosha shara kesidron. A shor only becomes a muad, let's say 3 in a row, or shalo kesidron v'nasa muad, let's say rugen, or it could also be not 3 in a row, not in order, but it can become a muad if there's a certain pattern. V'hechad to say rugen shavin, again the pattern has to be an equal kind of pattern. Kedetanya l'kaman b'pirkin. All of this is going to be in a brisa later on in our parak. And so the Mishnah then said, in such a case, Yeshalim Chatzi Nezek Tchila La'achron. The Chatzi Nezek is first going to be paid to the last individual who was damaged. Uva Gemara Mefarish money. The Gemara will explain who is the author of our Mishnah. V'im yesh bo moser yachzer shalafanav. If there's extra than the one right before that, the Nezek right before that gets paid. Kol Chatzi Nizko, all of his Chatzi Nezek. Varishonim Yafsidu. And the earlier ones, they will lose out. And the Mishnah continues, Rabbi Shimon Omer, Rabbi Shimon says, Shor Shavim Masayim, Shanagach L'Shor Shavim Masayim. If a shor worth 200 gores another shor worth 200, V'yein HaNevela Yafaklum, and then the body of the dead shor is worth nothing. Zen not Elmona, V'zen not Elmona. So then the Mazik, he takes 100 of the value of his shor, but the Nizik gets 100 of the value of that shor, because again, he's going to get Chatzi Nezek, 100 dinar is going to be exactly Chatzi Nezek. Now, Chazar v'nagach shor acher. Now, let's say that goes ahead and it gores again, it gores a different shor, Shavim Masayim, and that different shor is also worth 200. So then, ha'achron not elmona. So then the last person, again, that last Nizik is going to get 100. V'shalafanav, and the one before him, zen not el chamishim zuz, v'zen not el chamishim zuz. So this one will take 50 zuz, and the other one will take 50 zuz, meaning that Nizik right before him will get 50, and the Mazik will get 50. Rashi will explain. Chazar v'nagach shor acher, let's say goes ahead and it gores another shor, Shavim Masayim, that's worth 200. Ha'achron not el mana, now the very last person gets a mana. V'shalafanav chamishim zuz, the one right before that gets 50 zuz. U'shnayim harishonim, and then again the 2 first people, dinar zahav, they split 1 dinar, 1 golden dinar, which is the equivalent of 25 zuz. And Rashi explains, Rabbi Shimon Omer, Rabbi Shimon says, Shutfin hein b'nizakin, they're considered partners in the damage, meaning to say, again, let's say you have a case where the tam gores an animal, and so now it's worth 200, and the tam also itself was worth 200, so now the mazik and the nizik are essentially partners in this short tam, they each own 100. And Ketzad, how so? Shor Shavim Masayim Shanagach, again, the case that we just gave, a shor of 200 gores a shor of 200, now the mazik and the nizik become partners in that shor. B'shalafan of zen nizik rishon, what it means to say is now that shor goes ahead and gores again, so now they owe that person the Chatzi Nezek, they owe that person the 100. So then what we're going to say is v'shalafan of zen nizik rishon, meaning the first nizik notel chamishim zuz, he's going to get chamishim zuz, v'habaylim chamishim zuz, and then the original owner, the mazik, gets 50 zuz of this animal. The yesh nizik rishon bo hachetzi, because again that first nizik gets whatever is left in it, he gets half of it. Hilkach mashalim chatzi tashlumei nizko, so therefore he has to pay the half that he was originally getting to Savar like Rabbi Akiva Damar Shotfim Ninu, because he holds like Rabbi Akiva that they're considered to be partners. And the idea over here is that if this shore, that now the mazik and the nizik are partners in this shore, it goes ahead and gores another shore, now in combination they both owe 100 to this next nizik, and they split the remainder of the shore. That's why they get 50 zuz each. But chazar v'nagach shor shavim masayim. Now let's say goes ahead and gores a third shore. Ha'achron no talmana. Now the very last person, he's going to get 100. Hachatzi mikol misha, who again he's going to get that his full half. To migufo mishtalim, and pays migufo. V'nimtza oso shalafanav shaya hachatzi shalo mishalim mechelko chatzi minezek shenot la'achron. So it comes out that the person right before him, he now is the one that's responsible for what then happened to the next person. So he has to give up from his one half. Ushnayim harishonim, and then the first two nizik rishon v'habayla, meaning the very first nizik and the original owner, the mazik shahaya lehen l'chol echad revia. They all had 1/4. Mishalman kol echad revia shel nizko. They each pay 1/4 of the damage, meaning everyone is sharing in paying for the damage to this last nizik. And dinar zav, that's why they're only entitled to a 1 golden dinar, which is esrim v'chamisha dinarim kesef, which is 25 silver dinarim, or 25 zuz. But Perak Hazav, that's what it says in Perak Hazav. And so the idea over here is, again, that the very last nizik is going to get a money. He's going to get the chatzi nezik, that's 100. That leaves 100 for the first 3 people to split. Now the second nizik, so he had half the animal, so here, therefore he's going to get 50 now, because there's 100 left. And then the first 2 people, they combine for the other half, they split the other half among themselves, which means they're going to get 50 combined. That's 25 each, that's 1 dinar zahav each. And the Gemara says, Masnis and money, who's the author of our Mishnah? This is a reference to the Rebbe Meir, the first shita of our Mishnah, which said, Ha'achron niskar, that the last nizik is always going to be the one that gets paid, and then if there's any extra, it goes to the one before, etc. So we're trying to figure out who Rebbe Meir follows. Is he following Rabbi Yishmael, or is he following Rabbi Akiva? And the Gemara says, Delok Rabbi Yishmael, Delok Rabbi Akiva. It doesn't seem to follow Rabbi Yishmael or Rabbi Akiva. Because Ikar Rabbi Yishmael, because if you're following Rabbi Yishmael, again, Rabbi Yishmael says that a nizik is like a regular creditor. So then, Damar Balei Chovos Ninu, if that's the case, that every nizik is like a creditor, so Hai Achron Niskar, it shouldn't be that the last one is the one that always gets paid first. Rishon Niskar Mibayle, it should be the first one that gets damaged. He's the first creditor. The first creditor is always the first one that's able to collect. And so therefore, he's the one. The first nizik is the one that should be able to collect first. And Ik Rabbi Akiva, and if you're following Rabbi Akiva's opinion, you're saying that Rabbi Meir really follows Rabbi Akiva. Damar Tura de Shutzfi, who says that they're partners in the acts. So Hayesh Bo Moser, so it says in the language of the Mishnah is that if there's any extra goes back to the one right before, that wouldn't really be true according to Rabbi Akiva, as the Gemara will explain. And Rashi explains within Rabbi Yishmael, Rishon Niskar Mibayle, it should actually be the first one that gets to collect first. V'achron Yafsid, it should be the last one that loses out. Sharei Ein Rishon Shutef Bo Shatei Shmiraso Olav L'Schai Ben Izakim, because this first person, according to Rabbi Yishmael, he's not a partner in this animal. He's not chayiv. He's not responsible for anything this animal does further, and he's the first creditor, so he should collect first. And Rashi points out, this is not similar to the case we had in the previous parak, where let's say a Baal Chov is collecting and also you have a Nizik that's collecting. We say the Nizik always comes before the Baal Chov. Because there the Nizik can say to the Baal Chov, this shore, which again, if you would have had this shore and it would have damaged me under your authority, then I would have collected from this shore, so I always go first. The idea was that the nizik has more of a shibud on the shore than anyone else on the shore tam. The Baal Chov can't say that. Hilgach Baal Chov yiton nechasim acherim. The Baal Chov should go collect from something else. He shouldn't take from the shore tam if there is a nizik involved. Aval hacha, but over here where they're all niziks, so high nizik v'high nizik. This guy's a nizik and the other guy's a nizik. V'lo mishtalim el migufo. Everybody's collecting migufo from the actual animal. Umay the shakal high mafsid high. If this one collects, the other one's going to lose. Hilgach Kamma Kadim, and therefore it should always go by whoever is first, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Lamed Vav Amud Beis.